Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I am here with Susan. Hey there.
Hello.
How you feeling?
Um, I'm still I have this like chest cold thing and I'm feeling a little better, but I'm going to be muting when I start coughing
Yeah.
because no one wants
Uh,
to hear that.
so of course, now that we just started the podcast, someone has come. FedEx has come to the door.
Of course.
So that's so
This is
yeah.
the
Great,
reality. This is real life.
great start. 45 seconds
It's
in.
45 seconds in and we're already having like sound
It's
issues. Yeah.
amazing. You're coughing, so it might be one of those. Might be
It
one
might
of
be
those
one of
podcasts.
those podcasts.
Now I'm coughing.
Yeah.
So today's topic is I wanted to get back to a bread and butter topic.
Kind of
Back to
practical, not
yeah,
not theoretical.
theoretical, not high stakes, a little
Yeah.
more lower personal, not high stakes for individuals, but not like for
Okay.
society or anything.
Okay.
And that is something that you know a little bit about because you've uh, have have had many different jobs over your career, and the want to talk a little bit about, especially in the UX field, about burnout, about when um, signs you're being stretched too thin, how to know um, if you're being stretched too thin, how to identify if it's affecting your work, what to do about it, how do you um, try and make a lot of money and move up in your career if that's what you want to do, but also still prioritize not working a ton.
Okay.
And I guess I wanted to start with the with a little bit of context,
Okay.
um, because it, this is going to sound strange, but have you ever do you know anyone who is a highly functional alcoholic?
Okay, that is a really strange question. No, not that I know of, but
Wow, that's amazing. I know a lot of highly
you know
functional
a lot of people
alcoholics.
who are highly
Well, I did go to
functional.
law school, I should
I
say.
don't even know a lot of alcoholics. I don't think I've ever known a lot of alcoholics,
Well,
and the
that's the
few
thing is that so part of it is you wouldn't
you would
know,
know that they were highly
but
functional.
if you kind of know
No,
them and watch
I
them
mean I've known a couple of alcoholics and they
throw a
were
few
not highly functional.
glasses of wine back
So
and
so I'm going to say not that I know of.
okay, all right. So you're maybe the wrong person to talk to. You do not.
Okay, so goodbye. Does that mean I should just hang up because I'm the wrong
No,
person to
no,
talk
just
to?
for this one, just for this
Oh,
one
okay,
little
for
point.
this one example question. Okay.
Yeah, the because you're not a big drinker yourself, so
No.
it's sort of maybe like
I don't
you
hang
don't
out. I'm
run in
gonna
those
it's a
circles with
yeah,
other
I'm not
people
gonna
who
be
drink a
hanging out
lot.
with people who are heavy drinkers.
Um, so I know a number of highly functional alcoholics throughout my life, and it's sort of like it's not good. It's like a bad thing, right? You don't want to be an
It
alcoholic.
is. It's bad for your health,
It's bad.
mental and physical.
Yeah. But um, but it doesn't seem to impact their ability to work well. And it is I mean, maybe alcoholic is maybe a colored term, but it seems to be, at least in this particular period of their lives, like the type of lifestyle they want to lead in some ways. Um, and of course, the danger is that you return from highly functional to not very functional alcoholic, and that's a bad
Well,
that's
also,
consequence.
it's a disease, so
Yes,
it may
yes.
be hard to stop.
So this is maybe like the worst analogy ever, but
Yeah,
I
really.
do
Why are we talking about this?
because I know some people who are workaholics,
Oh, okay.
and it's sort of similar. Like it's
Yeah,
maybe
this
not the
yeah.
best. they're
Yeah,
stressed a lot of the time, but they are highly functional, and they seem to be able to exist in this highly stressed, highly like work all the time state for just decades.
sometimes a really long time,
They
yeah.
can just sort of like continue in what would burn a normal person out. So like
Yeah, yeah.
if I was partying and drinking in the same way that a highly functional alcoholic was, like
You wouldn't
I
make
would
it.
burn out in in 2 weeks.
Right, I
I'd
see
need
what you're
like a
saying. So
just a
some
nap. I
so
couldn't keep it
the
up.
amount of so people vary in terms of how much work, if we talk about work-life balance, in terms of how much work they want to do or for whatever reason, they vary. You're saying they vary in their ability to do that. For some people, they can do it, they can work a lot and seem to function really well. In fact, they seem to wanna do that. And for other people, maybe they can do it for a while, but then it's too much. And for some people, they just cannot do that much work in their life. It's just too much. Is that what you're
Especially work under load,
Yeah,
right? There's a difference between um, uh, you know, working a lot of hours, but
yeah.
maybe it's fun, maybe it's
Yeah, maybe it's not
relaxed,
super stressful.
and working, maybe less hours, but
Really
it's
difficult.
very high, it's very intense, very demanding, um, you know,
Okay.
very, very hard. And so those things sort of balance out. I have worked uh, sort of back in my youth, retail clothing, clothing retail, mall jobs, and there's a lot of downtime, standing around, being bored, um, and if you have a good group of people working there, you can chat and have fun. And in that particular case, I believe I was getting paid, I think $5.75 an hour.
Big bucks.
Really, really big bucks back in the day. But so even though there were maybe a lot of hours, the time went by easily enough because it was not hard. Versus, I could imagine, someone in the ER, or some other very we we have a client, and and there is a person who works at this company, and it's sort of her job to schedule all the meetings for like the C-suite, and so these are people who never have enough time, and everyone's trying to get a hold of them, and she's playing like seven-dimensional chess, scheduling all the meetings, because all the meetings with the C-suite, it's not just like with one, it's like you need like six, VPs or whatever to all get in the room together, and they have like half an hour every third week
She gets
available.
stressed.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But
You can
and that's
tell
like,
in the emails she sends out to the non-C-suite people
uh,
in
but
all capital letters.
but it doesn't matter, right? Because, well, okay, not it. She deserves to do whatever she needs to do that, because that is a very demanding, high stakes, difficult job,
Yeah,
that where there are never any good times at work, and
right.
every single day
Nobody's ever
she
happy
is
with what
making
she's
magic
doing.
happen, like keeping this all together. So
Yeah,
yeah, so there are very demanding, difficult jobs. And sometimes I will say that what is demanding and difficult for you may not be demanding and
right.
difficult for me.
Exactly.
So, for
Yep.
example, we both very much enjoy public speaking. There are days when we would do, a full day, 9 to 5, in-person workshop with 40, people in a room, and it we're teaching, there's exercises, people are running around, there's slides, we had to get there early and set the room up, and then afterwards break down. It is a long day. For some people, it would be like an impossible day to do. It would be so much, so demanding, so exhausting. But you know, I I can handle it a little bit more because I kind of like doing that kind of work. That is a busy day for me. Obviously, it's a long day, but it's also a fun day. Um, so certain people, like if I said, okay, you have to go up on stage and do public
For
speaking
8 hours
for
and
8 hours, some
talk
people would
and
be like,
run the
I couldn't
group and
even do it for two. I
make
couldn't
sure
do it for two
everybody's
hours.
happy, they would go, "No, my idea of high stress." Yeah. Yeah, so there's individual differences about what work is considered tiring, what work is stressful. Yep.
And then there are the cultural differences.
Yeah.
So we're here in America, which is generally in sort of the I don't know, what do we call like the Europe and the United States and Canada these days?
We call them Europe, the United States, and
That's such a
Canada.
long term
But I think, I don't know. I mean, it's
because then we're used
typically
to.
been called Western,
Yeah, we gotta move on from that. That
but
makes
I
no
don't know.
sense.
But,
Um,
I think expectations of what's normal for work stress, I think that has changed in the US in the last couple of years.
well, of course, and well, I was gonna say, so compared to the other, I don't do should I say, NATO, the Atlantic, North Atlantic,
I
something? I don't know. Compared to Europe, a lot of European countries, not all, well, yeah, basically all, not all, but Americans are just dogged workers. There are many people who get 2 weeks vacation a year versus the mandatory six that you would get in many places in Europe. A lot of Americans work more than 40 hours a week. That is a pretty normal occurrence. It is a level of work intensity that isn't um, matched in Europe. Now, compared, of course, then so that's America, where people do work hard, but then compare that to a more up and coming country like a Indonesia, like a China, like a Vietnam, where people are putting in 10-hour work days 6 days a week at some factory making jeans or smartphones or little metal screws or whatever they're working, right? I mean, it is incredible. Anyone who's ever done farm work with any of the migrant laborers here in the United States from Central America, I mean, it is awe-inspiring um, how much effort they can exert in a day, how quick and efficient they are to do difficult tasks just over and over and over again. Um, so in the United States, there's sort of a cultural like, yeah, you work a lot, dot dot dot, but maybe you're not like physically pushing yourself to the brink. Like there's a lot of work in the United States, but it's often like checking emails, being on a lot of calls, that kind of thing, versus the physical, press this button 10,000 times a day over and over and over and over and over again, which is another type of like very difficult, demanding, probably another level
Yeah.
of difficult and demanding work. So there are cultural differences depending on the
Mhm.
country about what the expectation is that
Mhm.
you are supposed to do for the money that you're sort of getting.
Mhm.
And I know, I mean, for myself, it just depends on the money. I probably would work in a factory and press a certain button over and over and over and over again if I was making a certain amount of money. Now, it would be a lot.
More than they are probably paying.
Would add a lot of zeros to whatever that is, right? I mean, I'm
Whereas
fortunate
I would
enough
probably
to,
say, "Nope, I don't need that much money. I'm not doing it."
though, I mean, you're in a different stage in your career, so there's that too. But yeah, if you were trying to support your family, and if you were able to support a lot of people by pressing this button over and
Okay,
over and over.
alright. So, but can we talk about this in terms of, like, the kind of, like, UX people or design people or
Yes. So the first thing is then just this like there is a lot of variability, and I don't think that there is a right or wrong answer
okay.
necessarily. Um, it's some people like to work hard, some people like to work smart, some people don't like to work much at all. There's I don't think there's a right answer to any of this. Um,
Okay,
I
can I ask a theoretical question?
Yeah, of course.
If you don't think there's a right answer to any of this, why did you pick it as today's podcast episode topic?
Oh, I mean, I don't think there's a right answer for like society.
Okay.
For an individual, there's probably going
Okay.
to be a right
Okay.
answer. Yeah. So like for example, like maybe in the United States 15 years ago, there was a like working yourself sort of ragged. That's like an admirable thing to do in some capacity. That really shows dedication. Whereas maybe that's still kind of true, but like a little less so. There seems to be a little bit more like, yeah, wow, you work some, and then but people who say, hey, I like from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. I do not check my phone. I do not answer work emails.
Yeah.
I take that as personal space. That's sort of like, wow, good for you. Way to set boundaries. So I think in the whereas maybe 20 years ago in the US that would have been looked at like, wow, you don't really care about
You
the
don't care
company.
enough.
You're not a
You're
hard
not
worker.
ambitious.
You're not ambitious. So I do think that has changed a little bit. And so all I'm trying to say is I don't think there's a right or wrong answer as to whether we society should be, trying to get people to work really hard or be like, hey,
But
no, you should
okay,
spend
but
time with your
I
family.
want to inject a little different take on this. May I?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. It's your podcast.
That seems a little passive aggressive, Guthrie. You can do whatever you want. Because I know last week you did the podcast by yourself and you were really thrilled with that because I wasn't around to tell you what I wanted to talk about. All right. No, but here's a point I want to make and maybe
Yeah.
get your take on it.
Yes,
I
for
think
sure.
when you're talking about things like UX work, design work, the kind of work that we do and we mentor others who are doing it, I think there's a question about quantity and type and quality of the work. And I think, you can take someone doing UX research, UX design, whatever, and you can just, it can be, there can be deadlines and there can be stress and they got to do this and they got to do that. And, and you can sustain that over a period of time. And then, putting aside the question of is it too much work for that individual or do they like working that much and so on. I think if you stretch people thin in terms of their time and their energy, they can't give their best thought. So I think you also have to think about the quality of the work.
For sure.
If you're, this is something I know, we've been dealing with some of our clients. It's like, okay, yeah, you can have everybody working on 2 to 3 projects at a time. And they're smart people and they're hardworking people and they'll do it and they'll even do it and leave time for their personal life. But if you only had them working on one project at a time instead of 3, would the quality of the work, would the insights of the work, would the designs be better? Would the research be better? I think you have to think about those trade-offs on a department basis and you those are the important decisions.
So this is the European sort of work argument. There are many nations in Europe and probably other places in the world, but we'll just stick with Europe because that's what I know, where there are often large lunch breaks. Here in the United States, a lot of people, eat at their desk. They have a working lunch. But in many places in Europe, 10 o'clock, hey, it's time to go get some coffee. And everyone goes and takes a big break. And it's like, okay, it's noon,
They
lunchtime.
go and sit in a cafe and have coffee.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. It's
They
like
don't get
they,
coffee to go and then walk back to their desk.
yeah, right. So I mean, it is a much more time relaxed work, and maybe just a generally relaxed work environment where the idea that, hey, we have to get a ton done today, we got to go. And a lot of European countries is not like that. However, just because they are working 15% less hours, the quality of the amount of work that they get done, and maybe the quality of it, the value that they're creating
Yeah,
is not
yeah.
15% less. It's like 3% less. So there is some sort of diminishing returns when you grind, and a lot of that is probably because, as we know from a brain science perspective, multitasking has a penalty. There is a penalty for to multitasking.
Yep, every
Having
time you switch, 'cause it's actually task switching.
task switching. Yeah,
Every
exactly.
time
Yeah.
you switch, you lose a small percentage of focus and therefore a small percentage of productivity. Uh,
So
so that can really add up
so having
during the day.
if you think about, if you really want to, if you're behind on a project, almost the best way to get ahead on the project, counterintuitively, is to work on it less, but just do it all at once. Have one day. We're going to get all the stakeholders, all the people involved into a room, and we're going to have a full day brainstorming working session. And
One of the things that or even just for me, I need to work on this design or I need to work on this research data analysis, and I'm gonna block off
block off. Yeah.
a day.
three
So because
hours,
so much, for so many
2 hours.
people, and we see this with our clients, there's meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings, and so now I have, 1 hour today to work on this, and then tomorrow I might have 1 more hour. And yeah, rather than just saying, "I'm not available for meetings on Wednesday and Thursday of next week
Yeah.
because
So I
I'm
mean, this
in the
is
store."
a function of modern society's obsession with email and with virtual meetings.
Yeah,
I think it used to be that, meetings were maybe an hour and people were really worked through stuff at sort of a mostly wasting of time space. And over the last decade or two, there's been like, well, let's stop wasting space. Let's make the meetings shorter. Let's make them tighter. And so, meetings went from an hour to 30 minutes. Everything was 30 minutes.
oh
But
god,
instead of having
I
less
hate
meetings,
those.
they
You
just
now have
became
more
more
meetings.
meetings.
I know.
And now some companies are moving to 15-minute meetings. So
Oh
there's
my
just
god.
even more meetings. And um, the one of the consequence of this is that you now have, back in the day, before you could easily schedule a meeting, meetings were at like the same time every week because it was difficult to schedule. And now you just throw an email together and send out an invite, and you can have meetings at any old time. Well, the consequence of that is that instead of having, I have a meeting at, my Tuesday 10 a.m., and then my Tuesday, 3 p.m. Those are my two big meetings today. So I have, 2 hours in the middle of the day that's always free to work on projects. Well, now I have half an hour here, and then you have a 15-minute over there, and then we have an hour-long thing over here. And so the ability to get an entire team in a room just for 2 hours to work on something is difficult. So everything becomes half an hour meetings, so it's easier to shuffle around. Well, the consequence of that is that instead of having a full 2 hours to work on something,
Right.
brainstorm something, get through something, focus on something, really dive in, just when your brain gets wrapped around it, after 20 minutes, it's like, okay, now on to the next thing. Now on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I don't think these things okay, I don't think these are small things. I think this is big, and it's impacting. the level of productivity. I think it's impacting the amount of stress, and I think it's impacting the quality of the work. And it can be, depending on your corporate culture, it can be, and even your individual habits can be hard to change. So, um, some of this can be helped by, for instance, an entire department saying, okay, we're not going to have meetings on particular days or something like that. But I think a lot of it has to be, I don't know. I try to change this individually, and it's hard. You feel like you're working against a tide. The tide is coming towards you. Meetings, meetings, meetings. Chop up your day, and you're like pushing against it. Trying desperately to save a block of time on your calendar. So it it isn't necessarily easy, and I think you have to kind of put your foot down and block it off. It would be much easier if the whole group or the department, if not the whole corporation, but just your design group, if you could agree to try some of these things. But I think that could be difficult.
Yeah. So I mean, ideally, the way. So yeah, this is the I guess if you want to call it the sort of uh, European argument of work, which is have a more relaxed pace. But then when you do, you will have more ideas, better ideas, faster, and you're not really going to lose out. You're in fact, maybe your idea is even better. Maybe the end result is even better than if you're flying around. You're doing a bunch of I guess one would say you're working harder, not smarter. This is perhaps another
Well,
euphemism.
and the cultural differences are huge. I know,
Yes.
you and I have had these conversations with people based in Europe, and they kind of just tilt their head and look at us quizzically, like, "What? Why? Why would you do it that way?" Like the whole idea of like I remember a conversation I had with someone in Portugal, and they were like, "But family always comes first." It was like they just couldn't even. You can't possibly work that much because then your family time. To them it was like not even a question. Like how can you even consider it, right? And so I think there are these cultural differences, but I do think, okay, again, I'm going to pull us back, and you can resist. I think for any of the people out there who are listening, who are, for instance, a UX manager, uh, or you know, and in your one of your roles is to schedule people on work. I mean, I think you have to push. I know, I've seen situations where it's been the rule to work on multiple projects and multitask and be split up from here to there. And then when you try and change that, even the people who complained about it, resist the change, right? It's like, what? I'm only going to work on one thing at a time? That sounds boring. So I think you sometimes you have to really push it to make it happen. And I don't know
Uh,
that that's always easy to do.
so how? Okay. So what are some signs and symptoms then of if you are uh, switching too much, if you are pushing too hard, you may lose out on some of the efficiency that you get because you're doing too many things, you're switching too many times, or
Yeah.
you're too mentally fatigued.
This
Um,
reminds me of so you're asking what are the signs and symptoms that that's going on?
yes.
This reminds me of like in those medical things, like the invisible killer. You don't realize that this
Oh,
that you are, you don't show any signs or symptoms, but
this is
actually what's really going
there are a
on.
lot of I've seen a lot of public service announcements for shingles recently on the
Yeah,
just
like
on the
right,
TV
this is a
commercials.
virus hidden in your
Hidden,
body, and it
waiting
may
to awaken.
waiting to do these horrible things to you. So I kind of feel like, sometimes it's a little bit of that. But first, let's talk about the really obvious things. So, uh, first of all, the research is pretty clear that task switching a lot literally makes you tired. I mean, it actually makes you
Yes,
tired.
well,
So
this
that
is
would be
why
one thing.
coffee exists.
Right. So I would say if you find that at the end of the day, you're mentally and physically exhausted, or if you find that you can't make it through to the end of the day without the coffee hits, several coffee hits in the afternoon.
Every like 75% of everyone listening said I couldn't make it through my day without coffee regardless.
Well, okay, wait a minute. I'm a fan of coffee. So I'm not saying coffee is a bad thing, but if what you know, I drink 1 cup of very strong coffee, in the morning. But if what I'm saying is if you find not it's not like, "Oh, let's take a coffee break, wouldn't that be fun?" If it's like, "I'm not gonna make it through to the end of the day. I'm so tired. It's 2 o'clock, and I'm so mentally and physically exhausted. I gotta go get some more coffee." Then to me, that's a sign that, you're too tired. Um, so I think being tired, being exhausted, feeling the stress, feeling that, uh, I can't do my best work. I can't do even good work. I got so many deadline pressures and things going on. I got to get this draft survey put together for this project, and the meeting is tomorrow and I have to do it. Haven't had time to really work on it, so I'm just going to throw something together. Sometimes that's okay, but if that's what you're feeling all the time, that you're kind of drowning in the workload and drowning in the tasks, and that you're not able to do your best work, those are definite signs. All of that are definite signs that you're being stretched too thin. So I don't know. Does that answer your question? But
I think that was
I do
very
think,
well
Guthrie,
put.
that sometimes it's not obvious. So I think, the other thing, okay, I'm going to take a small digression, because what I think is really interesting about the work for those of us who do, UX work, design work, where we're part of a team, or, um, we have an internal stakeholder. We're not in control of that work, right? We are assisting, we're guiding. And so it
The,
feels like
the,
a
the
lot of
project is moving along the tracks
the
in
project is
deadlines that
moved
we do not have control over, with stakeholders who are making decisions that we
with
do
the
not have input.
schedule.
Yeah,
The software developers are moving forward, and they need an answer on this design, and they need, so, and I think the majority of the work that we do, if not all of it, is like that. And so that's a particular stress in and of itself, because you have accountability for the quality of the work and you have no authority about how you do it. I mean, that's a, recipe for exhaustion. So I think we
you're
have
put
to
in you're being set
acknowledge.
up for failure.
Yeah, yeah. It's at least a setup for less than optimal quality of work, at the very least. And then it inches towards, failure. So, and that's the nature of the work that we do and the nature of the teams that we're involved in. So I think because of that, it means we, again, if that's the kind of role, UX research, UX design, if that's the kind of role that you play, it means you have to be on top of this issue of quantity of work and how the work is being done, because no one else, except maybe if you have a really smart UX manager who knows about this and tries to set it up so to mitigate some of this. But no one else on that team is gonna say, the stakeholder or the software developers or anyone else are not gonna come to you and say, I think if maybe you had a little less work to do, the quality of your work would be better. No, they're not even thinking about it. Not that they're bad people, they're just not going to think about it. So it's up to you. You've got to try and take care of this. And this is where I mean the other thing that comes into play here, I think, is this is my tactic. Is I push the other people. It's like, if I don't have authority, then I'm going to go back to the people who do. And I'm going to force them to make a decision. It's like, okay, you want these 10 projects worked on, and I have this UX team, and they can't work on those 10 projects. There's not enough resources. So you got to either give me more resources or you have to prioritize the work, because we can't do all of this. It's not going to happen. And my attitude is, I we want to do quality work. We want to do the most important work, but that's not up to me.
So
You have to tell me.
how do you balance that then with maybe a corporate culture where like, and I think in a lot of companies, once we're getting into the senior principal UX researcher X or Y, like there is the way you get promoted and the way you kind of move up in a lot of organizations is that everyone sort of likes you. You make connections and you just say yes all the time. That's how, when they think about promotions, like, oh, look at all the great work so and so has been doing, because you've made a lot of stakeholders happy by just they wanted X and you gave them X. It's usually that, or you've been associated with some sort of product that was successful, or like usually the people who are not being promoted, it's not like so and so has done consistently good work for a long period of time. What a that's a perfect, fantastic. No,
Yeah,
it's
no, I understand.
usually
I know.
standing out in some way by making things happen in a tight spot.
But here's the thing. I think there are two things that go on that make this easier than you might think. One is that typically your stakeholder doesn't understand what you do or how you do it,
No.
and they just want results, right? So you can just, speak to that. What is it they want? They want a high quality product and they want it to go out by a certain time frame. So, I speak to that. It's like, okay, you want a high quality product and you want it released on time, and I'm telling you that with the resources we have, there's not. You gotta choose, because we just don't. We it can't be done. So, I think just speaking to, tying, not going into detail of it. I think it's useless, for the most part, to say, "Oh, but if you want this high quality product, we have to do this and this and this and this and that." Yeah, because they don't understand what you're doing. So I think it's more a matter of just, again, pushing for prioritization and making sure they know that you guys have the same goals. So that's one thing. But the other thing I think that's really powerful is the whole question of UX strategy. Um, I think a lot of UX people tend to be perfectionists. I think there's something about the work and the kind of people that go into the field and they really, they know, anybody who's been in UX for a while, we know what needs to happen to do whatever it is, research or design for this product to do it well. Like, we know, but the chances of being able to do all of those things and in the right order are pretty slim. So, given what you know about this project and given what's important and given the resources and all of that, what should you really do and concentrate on? What's critical and what can be let go of? And sometimes, even after you do that, it's still we don't have enough time and resources. And again, that's when you have to go back to the stakeholder and say, I can do this, but I'm telling you, it's not highest quality, or it's not going to happen in the deadline. What do you want to do? Um, but I think, we have to let go of always doing things perfectly. And we have to decide, given what's going on, here's the best stuff we can do within a reasonable amount of resources and time. I think that's the nature of the work that we do. Maybe that's unfortunate, but I just think that's reality.
And so you think there's a line that can be threaded between work, because I mean, you may make people mad because they're stressed and under a deadline and they need this from you, and you say no.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I, I'm in a well, okay, two comments about that. One is that I'm fortunate. I'm an external consultant. I mean, it is true that I might make so many people mad at me that I lose the client. That rarely happens, but it's not unheard of. Uh, but it's not like I'm have to worry about my long-term career with this organization, because the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to lose him as a client, and then I'm going to go get another client. So, that's the wonderful advantage of being an external consultant. And also I
Then
think
you're sort
that
of brought in to be the voice of God in some capacity.
well, you're brought in because you're an expert and they don't have to listen to you, and many
Well,
times
so
they
when
don't.
the expert says no,
Yeah.
that
Well,
carries
then you can
weight.
just say, "Okay, no, we're done with that expert," or you can say, "Oh, well, the expert said no." So I think it's tougher when you're inside an organization. But having said that, I want you to think about in your, if people listening, think about the people in your organization that do, make move forward and move up in the organization. And although there are some, and Guthrie, we know there are some organizations where the culture is and this is not true for all organizations by any means, but there's some where the culture is, don't make waves, don't get people upset, be nice, and all of that. But even within those organizations, if you look at the people that are moving up, they're not, they're not usually the people that say yes to everything. They're not.
No.
They're the people who say yes to some things and then push back on some things because because they're smart and because they're thinking about the important stuff like the quality of the work or what can really be accomplished. I think in almost any organization, it's likely that not that you just stand there and cross your arms and say, no, I refuse to do that. I'm not saying do that. But if you can come back and say, look, I think this plan is it's not gonna what you want is the high quality product by, this date, and I don't think this plan is gonna get us there, and I have an alternate idea. So, um, I think you can get ahead by by negotiating that. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I don't think saying yes to everything someone wants is a good idea a lot of the time. And I think your the way you're viewed in the company can be enhanced by saying no in the right way. And I'm telling you, this is hard. This has been really hard for me personally because I'm a conflict avoider. I'm a need approval kind of person. I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to like me. Um, that's the worst combination of stuff if you're going to be a consultant. So I've had to learn how to do this over the years. But I have to say, I've 95% of the time, uh, or more, the whole thing, me, my role in the organization, the work is much more successful when I say, "Okay, guys, this isn't gonna work." And the times when things have really fallen apart and become a disaster, or when I see the warning signs. In fact, Guthrie, I did a presentation years ago at, I think it was the UPA conference, Usability Professional Association, before they became the UXPA, when their name used to be UPA. I did a talk on the 7 secrets of successful consulting. I
Too many
liked
S,
all the
too many S's.
I liked all the alliteration, it was fun. Anyway, I did, a talk on that because what happens is you see these warning signs, and if you ignore them, the whole thing will blow up. It will just all blow up and be a big mess. So it's just not, when this isn't gonna work, you're not set up to do the work you need to do, you might as well bring it up because otherwise it's all gonna blow up. By the way, can I do a little aside here?
Yes.
Guthrie, you're gonna say yes, right?
Yeah.
So when I gave that talk, this was so long ago, but I remember it was really unusual because I didn't use PowerPoint slides. I hooked up my iPad to the projector, and this at the time was unheard of. Like, nobody did this, and there was even, like, a ripple through the crowd and people, eh, posting saying, "She's she's doing the talk by writing on an iPad." And so I just had my iPad, and it was the 7 secrets, and I just wrote, number 1, and then I wrote it, and then we talked about it, and then number 2, and that was the entire presentation, was just me scribbling in my bad handwriting on the iPad. It
You
was
were you were playing
great.
with form at the time.
It was really fun.
You were playing
I
around with
should do that more
mediums.
often. They were all I had everyone's attention because they were like, "What's she gonna write next? Will I be able to read her handwriting this
You're
time?"
definitely
No.
not.
Yeah, that was a problem. And writing this was also back in the day when
Oh
writing
yeah,
on
the
an
stylus
iPad,
was
the
not.
you did not have a good stylus. This was when the iPads had first come out, but it was fun.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's all pretty good advice. It, do you what are your last question for you? What are your thoughts about
Yeah,
then the future of work? I know in the pandemic things got really slow or really busy, and everyone was working from home and like being on calls while they were also playing video games or playing with their pet or doing whatever they were doing off camera. Um, do you think the cat is out of the bag when it comes to work? Do you think that I mean I do wonder if it's like sort of like a dog chasing its tail where people are less productive because they're not in person. And so because they're not in person, they're on more meetings and stuff that they don't really care about and isn't like crucial to their work. And because they're in all these meetings that aren't crucial, they're not paying attention. And because they're not paying attention, the meetings are not as productive. And because the meetings are not productive, there's more meetings, which
okay, wait a
just is
minute. What's the
enhancing the
question here?
cycle. So like I guess what I'm trying to say is like, do you think that moving forward, I mean the pandemic, working from home, in some ways it's kind of people are coming back to the office, in some ways that people will never come back to the office.
Yeah.
um, so I mean do you think that this is something that in 5-10 years people are going to adapt, that the work kind of cultures will adapt to and figure out, like find, I mean, you'd like to think that in whatever capitalism efficient blah blah blah, that companies figure out that, hey, we have too many, before, we're having too many meetings, people are too fractured, people are, if we look at our productivity, we're actually not getting as much done, even though there's more meetings than ever. So let's actually have, if we have less meetings, then maybe, some startup will be like, we have one meeting a week and everyone just works on their own thing. We used to, there were startups that sort of did that, just work on whatever
Oh,
you want.
there's all kinds of edicts coming down, like, wasn't it Spotify that came down and said there can be no more recurring meetings
Yeah,
with
I mean, yeah.
more
So
than 2
companies are gonna
people or
try
something like.
something, and then there'll be a book, and it'll be, kind of
Right.
become in vogue again, and then that'll trickle through. So, but so do you think that we're getting sort of to a pendulum sort of shift back towards, actually we should have fewer meetings and people should just work on like one project really intensely, and then not be bouncing around as much, because part of the reason that people are bouncing around so much is that, a lot of stuff has been tied in with agile and pies and scrums and sprints, and so the whole point of agile in a lot of ways is, let's, instead of working forever on one project, we are going to put a line in the sand and say, we're done with this project or this part of the project here, and then we're moving on to the next one. And for some organizations, that's really fantastic because, it's like, hey, we know that here's our hard deadline. We have to get this done. And then like decisions get made and the decisions are fine. And then the company ends up being more productive, which is why has been thrown in everywhere. Um, so, I mean, it is having all these projects happening, and you know if you have 5 times as many projects happening because you're on a quick sprint pie thing, instead of like the 2 year, we're redoing this app and it's going to be a 2 year waterfall big whatever, the way maybe it was done in the 90s or something. Now over those 2 years, we're doing 50 little projects. Well, that means that now if you have the same number of UX resources, or maybe a little bit more, now each person is working on like 6 different projects because there's all these teams and squads and things going on, and sprints and blah blah blah. So that is to say, right? So like, do you think that we've been sliding one way in the pendulum, which is more fractured, smaller projects, fast, 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 MVP, roll, 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 go, go, go? Do you think at some point, at least in the UX, there'll be some sort of pendulum switch back? Because I'm not sure that there necessarily will be anytime soon. There seems to be a disgust for the number of meetings and a disgust for how not productive all the meetings are. But that's sort of what happens when you have a million projects, because each project needs a meeting. And in fact, in most agile plans, there are standard meetings, at the
A
beginning
lot of
of the
them.
sprint and at the middle and the end of the
The
sprint, and then you
daily
have to have the
scrum, and then
share.
you have the right.
Oh, yeah. So built into the framework are all these meetings. And so if
Yes.
you have a lot of projects and you're working at a high cadence, just by sheer
Yeah,
existing, you're going to
yeah.
have a lot of meetings. So how does the industry get out of this tangle that it's in,
I mean
or will it not?
maybe I'm just pessimistic, but I don't think necessarily there's gonna be a pendulum switch, and I don't think, I don't what's the phrase? I don't know what the
Put your
phrase is, but
face back in the tube,
I don't think anybody's
cat out of the
minding the
bag.
store. I don't think anybody's looking at. I'm sure there are productivity experts out there, God bless you, but I don't see anybody, really saying, "We're going to stop." and figure out the best way for all of us to work together, and we're gonna reconfigure the way we're working together. I
Oh, I
don't see that.
disagree.
You do? You think people are
Yeah,
doing that?
companies are reconfiguring how they work together constantly, and it's just shuffling chairs on the deck.
Okay,
It's
so there all right,
okay, now
people are
these
doing
teams
it.
are together, or no, we're gonna
Yeah,
break
okay,
these
you're
teams
right, you're right, but
apart,
I
and
don't see it having any kind of
well,
impact.
people complained about the number of meetings.
People complain a lot about the number of meetings. I think so I don't know.
There
I
seems
don't
to be
know.
a general fatigue and disgust with the number of
There
meetings.
does. There does, and rightly so. And I guess, I don't have an answer about how to fix it. I guess right now my answer is take charge of your own calendar and just, you know, stop the insanity. Um I don't know if it's going to happen corporate wide or even department wide, but I think people are tired of it, as you said, and I think they do recognize that the impact on the quality of their work and the increase in the stress. Um, I just don't know if I see people actually making changes to it, and it's maybe I mean I'm a fan of collaboration, but I think maybe we've gone too far that way, and we don't
Well, I don't
appreciate.
think it's. I think the problem is it's not collaboration.
Well, it's
So,
seen as being collaboration,
well, I think too often a lot of the stuff is getting approval from stakeholders. So I have to present for this small piece because I've been working on it and I need you to approve the direction that this small piece is going. And then once I have approval there, then I have to go to this other team and be like, okay, we've got approval from so and so, and this is how we're going to integrate it in the blah blah blah. And then they go to someone else. It's like, okay, here's the plan for the next what.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
there is a lot of like I need approval from
Well, and there's a
someone,
lot of having the meeting before the meeting before the meeting.
which is
There's
so all of this is not necessarily collaboration, which is not let's all get on a call and we're gonna
and
brainstorm
work
some
together to do this
ideas.
thing.
We're
Yeah,
gonna like yeah, like okay,
yeah,
like what do we know about so and so? Like how what are some, yeah, what are some options that we could go through? And it's a lot more presentations, getting
yeah.
buy-in,
Right,
um,
right.
sort of, and then working on some ideas a little bit for 10-15 minutes versus like a
Okay,
2 hour
well, I
brainstorm.
wonder, yeah, so I don't have an answer for any of this. I do wonder, someone, the other day sent me, oh shoot, what's it called? It wasn't Zoom, but it was another letter besides Z and then OOM. It wasn't Noom, that's the weight loss thing. It was
Tomb.
no, it was
This is the
something else.
worst Wordle game of all time.
No, no, no. It was something where it was a really quick and easy.
Boom.
It was a very quick and easy tool for, adding in, you know, it was just like your camera's on, your
Boom.
microphone's on, your screen it's capturing your screen, and you just do a little 3-minute video walking through,
Boom.
"Okay, here's what I worked on." But it was, like, really quick and really easy, and then as soon as you were done with it, you could send it to a group of people, and you could say, here's what I did, and here's the next step." I could see maybe some kind of very easy, very well designed app where you could just do a little video, and then it would have a little poll, and it would go out to everyone, and everyone could just say, "Yeah, I
You
saw it and it's good.
know, this
Go
used to
keep
be
going."
called email, and you would email the plan of what was happening out to a group, and then people would say, looks good. But now everyone
But
got
now you
so
have to have a
inundated with
meeting.
emails.
Right, when people don't wanna read their emails. But that's what I mean, if there could be just something and it was quick and you could watch.
It was called a memo, and a secretary would write up what you say
Okay,
with
I
some
get
details
it.
and send it.
But that's what I think that maybe and then you wouldn't need a meeting. It's just like, here's the next step, here's
I'm
what I'm doing.
serious though. That's how email used to work, and an
It
email was
did.
just a replacement for the memo, which
Right.
is here's what I'm doing, here's the plan, here's what I need to tell you.
Right.
We're not having a meeting. I am
Yeah.
sending you this so you understand. So here's a memo.
That's where I think we should go. I mean, to me, that would be
Back to the future.
a small interim step to get us out of this.
So like
So,
it's basically a modern memo with video.
yeah, a modern memo that's easy to create and then, again, attached to some kind of feedback form so that if people wanted to say, "Great, I saw it," or "Looks good, but, can we change the survey," or just that people could comment on it very easily, very quickly without having to open Miro and draw a box, which makes me crazy. Um, or any of,
You've never really figured Miro out.
I have such a hard would if someone, I use Miro every day. Okay, I'm gonna that'll be the next episode. My complaint. I use Miro every day, and every day, it's like, could someone please tell me what is the how do I get rid of this row in the table, or how do I move the row in the table from this table to that table?
You have so much
There's
trouble
always some
with
little
Miro.
thing I'm trying to do
I'm trying to change the
that
color of
seems
a button.
impossible. Like, okay, it's a mind map, but I don't want the mind map to be attached here. I want it attached. And I have to now go and look online and for a tutorial. Yeah, that tool makes me crazy. All right, Guthrie, we managed to use up an entire hour, which we're very good at.
Another hour of you,
Another
the
hour,
listener's time
no,
gone.
another hour gone.
I hope you
And
spent
I
it
have to
wisely.
go because I have a meeting. No, just kidding.
We do have a meeting in 45 minutes.
I have a meeting in 10 minutes.
You're at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Oh my god. See, now, yeah, we should I mean, I one last thought.
What?
What if you said, like, for my day, I have two types of meetings.
Yeah.
You can only schedule me
Yeah.
for 10 minutes or
Yeah.
2 hours.
Yeah.
You know? Like either it's just a quick how you doing,
Right.
or
Or we're
two
working on
hour work
something.
2 hour working session. Nothing in between. No 1 hours, no 45 minutes,
I like
not
it.
even 15. Just 10 minutes or 2 hours.
It's really, yeah. And I know there are tools where you set your calendar and then people can go there and pick a slot.
Depends on the
Maybe,
organization.
but those are hard to use and that's not tied into my Microsoft account and blah, 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 blah. So if we could get these tools, I like that idea, Guthrie, but the setting it up, I would find daunting.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, nothing. The
It's
systems
not easy, and it
are
should be
not
easy.
made for that.
So, Microsoft is doing all the stuff with Copilot. Maybe they could make this easy. Maybe I could just say to Mr. Copilot or Ms. Copilot, "Can I give my Copilot a name?" Maybe I can just say to Henry, my
If it was
Copilot,
named Copilot,
Clippy. Maybe I
like
can just say
I think there is a name.
"Hey, Henry, set up all my
Henri.
meetings can only be 10 minutes or 2 hours. Thank you. Goodbye." Henri? Oh, it's Henri.
Yes, yes. You can make it a sort of a French assistant. All
All right. Hey,
right.
Guthrie, thanks for the conversation. We didn't
Yeah.
solve anything, but
You barely coughed at all. I think that's
no, I
great.
coughed a lot. I just put myself on mute. Didn't
No,
you
you coughed
notice?
compared to how much you were coughing last week. I think this is
You think
like you
I'm
were able
getting
to do
better?
long sort of soliloquies on sort of topics without coughing. So I think that's great progress.
All right. All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.